So the Legend of Zelda series can essentially be broken into two different categories. You have your 3D Zelda games, which started with Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, all the way up to Breath of the Wild. And then you have the 2D games, A Link to the Past, all the way up to the brand new remake on the Switch of Link's Awakening. And while clearly the 3D Zeldas are what most people want to play at this point, they're the ones that are more out in front. Us fans of the Legend of Zelda series, the old fans, we know 2D games are where it started, and they're not going anywhere. So to continue our Zelda 35th anniversary series today, that is what we are gonna look at. We are gonna look at the 2D Zelda games, which ones could potentially be brought over to the Switch, which ones could be remade, or maybe something else entirely. What's up, guys? Welcome back, or welcome in for the first time. If you are new here, do me a favor, make sure you go down in the description and click the link and hop in our Discord. We are in there literally every day talking about all kinds of stuff, including 2D Zeldas. So click that link and we'll see you in there after this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this off. We're gonna get the ones that I just don't think are coming to the Switch out of the way quick so we can get to the meat of this video. First one, A Link Between Worlds. That one is way too new, and even though it is one of my favorite Zelda games, I just don't see that one coming over to the Switch. As far as visuals go, on the 3DS, I think it's fine. Would I like to see it come to the Switch? Yes. It just gives me one more reason to keep the 2DS on the shelf and not have to take it off to play these games. So would I like to see that? Yes. Is that going to happen? Probably not. And I'm gonna go ahead and say probably the same thing for Triforce Heroes. That's probably gonna be the same general thing there. Now the next thing I wanna talk about is a game I've actually heard more and more people keep saying this over the past few days. I actually wrote this 3-4 days ago now, and since I wrote this, I've heard probably 2 or 3 other people talk about this. So clearly, this is a good idea, and it's being talked about out there, obviously a lot more than I knew. But I think a possibility of a 2D Zelda game that they could bring over, especially for something that is online, would maybe be a version of a Four Swords game. Now, I don't know exactly what that would be, but I did have one idea that I thought would be pretty cool. I talked about this Zelda 35 things in one of our last videos, which I'll link here if you guys want to check that out. I talked about the Zelda 35 thing, and if they used the original Zelda game for that. But what if they did something completely different with the online thing? And yes, maybe it would go away in a certain amount of months or whatever, but what if they did something along the lines of Four Swords, where instead of it's just you versus 35 other people or whatever it is, maybe it's you and 3 friends, a group of people against other teams, using that same kind of Four Swords type gameplay where you're trying to help each other solve the puzzles. I think they could do something very, very interesting with that, and as I said, it seems like a lot of other people are talking about this now too, so if they're gonna bring Four Swords back in any way, I think that would be the way to do it. Okay, so with those ones out of the way, I'm gonna say the rest of what we're gonna be talking about here are probably games that are in remake territory. As you know, we just talked about it. A Link Between Worlds is the last 2D Zelda that wasn't on the Switch. And obviously, last one on the Switch was a remake. And while there's nothing wrong with the way the 2D games are now, they are all pretty old at this point, except for the ones on the 3DS. And they do need a little bit of polish. What they did with Link's Awakening, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Now, do I see them reusing that art style again? Possibly, maybe, but if they use that art style again, I think the most fitting Zelda games to use that with would be the Oracle games. Not only are Link's Awakening and the Oracle games very similar visually, it's also the same Link, and it kind of goes right into the timeline there, you know? If they were gonna do remakes of those games, I would love to see them in that style. Now, it's totally possible that they could do remakes of those games in a completely different style, and I'd be okay with that too. And I know Nintendo's not a really big fan of reusing art styles like that. Now it has been done a few times. They've done it with Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. Obviously, we're seeing it now with Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2. And they've loosely kept the same art style with Wind Waker to Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks as well. But before we jump over into those games, because I do want to talk about those, I do want to bring up one other one that I probably don't think we're going to see here, and I know there's been a lot of talk about it, and man, I'd love to see it, but I just don't think it's time, and that is A Link to the Past. To me, that game still holds up visually pretty well. The gameplay still holds up fine. It's also on the Nintendo Switch Online app, and kind of loosely, I know it's not a direct remake, but they did have a reimagining, a new game in that same map, pretty much in that same style with A Link Between Worlds. So it's kind of already been redone, sort of. I know it's not an exact remake, but I mean, come on, they're very similar. So I don't think that one is gonna be something we're gonna see this year. Is it possible to happen? Yes, obviously it's possible. We never know with Nintendo, and I'd love to see it. It's one of my favorite Zelda games, but I don't think this is the year for that one. But back to Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass. As you guys probably know, we have been seeing some trademarks pop up for those two games. So I guess it's possible that we could see Phantom Hourglass on the Switch. That one's probably gonna need a remake completely. That game was built for 2 screens. So unless they figure out some way to break those screens up on one, I don't know how well that's gonna work. That one's gonna need a big overhaul if it's coming to the Switch. But being remade, I could see Phantom Hourglass looking like Wind Waker HD. Obviously a top-down 2D style of that, but wow, could you imagine how good that would look? I'd love to see him try. I think that one's gonna be extremely difficult to get onto the Switch just because of the dual screen stuff. It's a lot. Love to see him do it. I think it would be very cool, but it's gonna take a lot of work. Okay, so the next one I'm gonna talk about quickly. I wanna get this out of the way because I feel like this actually is a possibility, and I hope it doesn't happen. I guess if it does, this is the game that needs it. But what if we see a remake of Zelda 2? Of all of the Zelda games that we have, 2D, 3D, this one is probably received the worst by most Zelda fans, I would say. It's my least favorite Zelda game for sure, by a long way. A long way. Anyway, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people out there who feel the same way I do about it. There are some that like it, that's totally fine. But I think Nintendo may know that it's the least liked Zelda game as well. And if you've done so well with so many of the other games in the series, why not go back to that one that people had so many problems with, rework it, and give it to the new generation of Zelda fans? I mean, I think it's a possibility. Maybe not a great one, but it's definitely the one that needs a remake the most, in my opinion. I could see that one actually becoming a good game if they would change just little things here and there. Just update the game to make it playable today. Because I don't know if you guys have gone back and played that on the NES app. It's rough. It's a really hard game too. But I'll admit it would be cool to see Nintendo take a game like that a lot of people really didn't like, turn it completely around, and maybe be, you know, some people's favorite Zelda game. That would be very interesting to see. Now, another one I want to talk about that I've probably seen of all the 2D games and all these videos we've done in this entire series, the one that has been talked about in the comments the most by far is the Minish Cap. I would say this one has a decent chance of either a remake or maybe just being put onto the Switch. I'd be okay with that. If they just put the Game Boy Advance games on the Switch, I think that would be a perfectly fine way to bring Minish Cap over. But that's another one I think that could use the Link's Awakening art style, but I think there's probably a lot of other ways they could go with an art style for that game. And honestly, I would love to see them try to do something with that. But at the same time, like I said, I think that one's fine. That one could just be ported directly over to the Switch for, you know, the app, or maybe it could come over on a cartridge or in the eShop or something with a couple of other games with it. I think that one's a possibility that we'll at least see it on the Switch. I'm not sure how, but even if it doesn't come for the 35th anniversary, I think Minish Cap's something we're gonna see on the Switch at some point. Okay, let me check my list here. At this point, I do believe we have talked about, or at least mentioned, every single 2D Zelda game except one. And this one is the one that I think we are going to be seeing some big things from in 2021. I mean, I don't know, maybe not. But what I would like to see for 2021 and the 35th anniversary is a complete remake of the original Legend of Zelda game. I feel like this is the game that should be getting the most attention on the anniversary because it is this game's anniversary that we will be celebrating. 35 years ago, this game came out. And because of this game, we have all these other games that we love so much. And like I said in the last video about Ocarina of Time, it's the one that started the 3D Zelda games. This is the one that started it all. This one needs a fresh coat of paint and needs to be reintroduced to the new Zelda audience. Now, over the last couple days, I hopped on the NES app. As I said, I jumped in there, I was playing some Zelda 2, and I did go back to this game just to kind of refamiliarize myself with the whole thing. This game could be absolutely amazing as a remake. it's already great. You know, there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, you have to have a strategy guide to be able to beat The Legend of Zelda, the original, or you just have to go fire every tree and bomb every wall. But that's really not the case. If you actually play the game, go into the caves, read the things these people are telling you, you know, pay the rupees to the people who are gonna give you information, all the information is there. It's very cryptic, but it's all there. That was the early versions of Zelda puzzles. They were kind of like riddles. I mean, that's how you know to go to the top of the mountain to get the sword. That's how you end up finding out that you need to play the flute by the pond with no fairy so you can get the entrance to whatever dungeon that is. I can't remember, one of the later ones, but it's all there. They could keep this game almost exactly the same. They could do what they did with Link's Awakening to this game. I think this one would need its own art style. I don't think the Link's Awakening stuff would fit this one, but I really do think it would be amazing to see this game with a fresh coat of paint. Breath of the Wild was heavily inspired by the original game, by the exploration of the original game. As we've gone on from there to where we are now, before Breath of the Wild, it was getting pretty handholdy. It seemed to get worse with every single game. You had somebody there telling you, oh, hey, maybe you should go do this. Maybe you should do that. Maybe you should try it this way. Not the original Zelda. You just go. That's it. You don't even actually know to go in that little hole to get the sword that's down there. They don't tell you anything. And just like I was talking about the riddles and things you read from, you know, people you find in the caves in the original game, there's stuff like that in Breath of the Wild all over the place. Little books you read. Someone you meet will tell you this little nugget about something on the complete opposite side of the map, but the next time you're over there, you can check that out. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Breath of the Wild fans would appreciate Zelda 1 so much because it's the same game. It's 2D, but it's the same type of game. I just think this is the perfect time to bring this game over and let these new Zelda fans have a chance with a game that is up to date and not, you know, not from 1986. I mean, this is the game that started it all. I would love to have a fresh version of this game 35 years later. So in 35 years, maybe we can show our kids or our grandkids this game. But you know, 70 years from now, a game made, you know, 1986, that's not gonna translate well. It needs an update. So as far as 2D remakes go for the 35th anniversary, my money is on the original. Who knows if I'm gonna be right? As I've told you guys before in some of these videos, these are just my opinions. But anyway, guys, jump down in the comments right now and let me know what you think about this. As most of you know, for the first 3 hours or so after I put a video up, I try to answer just about every single comment. So if you want to talk about this or you have a better idea of what we could see for a 2D Zelda for the 35th anniversary, leave it down below right now. I will see you down there. But guys, that is gonna do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like, make sure you are subscribed, and we'll see you in the next one.